as a clinician, I'm very, very strict. You know me. I'm quite heavily evidence-based because I want to prescribe based on facts, based on evidence level. So before I implement it into clinical practice, I not only need to understand the mechanism, so do I understand why it would work, and is there any evidence in animal models that there is beneficial effect?
Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Dr. Gil Blander. Welcome to Longevity by Design, how to live a longer, healthier life. We are produced by Inside Tracker, your science-based guide to optimize your body from the inside out. Our guest today is Dr. Andrea Maier, a globally recognized leader in healthy aging and geroscience. She is a professor in medicine, healthy aging, and dementia research, and director of the NUS Academy for Healthy Longevity at the National University of Singapore School of Medicine. Dr. Maier's research focuses on understanding the mechanism of aging and age-related diseases, translating geroscience into human clinical trials and real-world intervention, and advancing precision geromedicine. She has published hundreds of peer-reviewed publications and served as a founding president of the Healthy Longevity Medicine Society, which I am a member of and very proud of the work that they are doing. Welcome, Dr. Maier.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blander. So should we say Jill or not?
Yeah, Gil is good and Andrea is good if it's good with you.
Good. Absolutely. Life is too short to, I think, if you are friends, to use titles.
Excellent. I will note it. And before we will start, a request for our audience: please like, follow, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It's help others find this science-driven conversation. So I met Andrea a few months ago in a conference in Boston, and she presented a very interesting data about lifestyle intervention, mainly multivitamin, mineral supplements, and what really happening there, and what is the science saying about that. So I spoke with you, Andrea, and we said let's have a dedicated episode on that and try to provide to our audience the real science and what we really see in the supplement and so on. So I would like to start with a question about what the evidence say about the effect of multivitamins and mineral use on health span and aging outcome in humans, who benefits and who likely does not?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. We already know that half of the population, at least here in Singapore, but I know also in Europe and very likely in the US, is taking multivitamin and minerals. I think everybody already had that moment where seeing this bottle, very colorful most of the times, and then saying on the outside multivitamins, why not? Why shouldn't I take that? So I very often as a person also have that feeling to just buy something, to take it. But as a scientist, we of course want to know if this really has any benefit to our health. And as clinician, of course, I want to know if I should prescribe it to my patients and clients. So we did a systematic review, and I think you saw the first results of that systematic review, including more than 5 million participants. And I think that already shows that there's lots of research going on with multivitamin and minerals. Even a couple of randomized controlled trials which is the highest level of evidence. And while looking at all the 5 million participants, we were able to showcase that multivitamin and minerals might have a positive effect to improve global cognition, which is great, and memory in older adults, and in some studies also to reduce psychological symptoms in healthy individuals. And it might also a little bit lower the systolic blood pressure. and in people who are at risk for hypertension, which is great. However, there are so many studies also showing that there is no benefit in terms of survival. There's no benefit if somebody has COVID. There's no benefit on other cognitive domains, neither on other cognitive outcomes. And while we were looking really into the studies in the randomized control trials, the highest level of evidence, but also observational studies, what we were able to showcase is that if individuals are at risk or are diseased or there was not eating well, these individuals might benefit of taking a multivitamin and mineral. And of course, that makes sense because normally we should eat healthily and we should actually get the multivitamins and minerals through our food. And that's what our body needs. So in summary, the evidence, especially for healthy individuals, is quite low that it has a beneficial effect, multivitamin and minerals. However, if there is a dietary problem, so not eating well, in conditions where somebody undergoes chemotherapy or has a hip fracture or already cognitive symptoms, then a multivitamin and mineral might be quite positive in terms of their health. So, which leads me towards, if I see the bottle, should I actually now buy it or not? I think first I should measure my vitamins and minerals, and then making the decision to take a multivitamin and mineral pill or not. So it's not a one size fits all. Not everybody needs it. Can it do harm? If you take a lot, absolutely, but not if you are not overdosing. So, but in the end, it also costs money. So where to put your money in? And I wouldn't say the multivitamin and minerals is not per se the choice of younger individuals, middle-aged individuals who are quite healthy, but can be beneficial for older populations.
Okay, so what I got from your explanation is that you prefer a personalized approach or personalized nutrition approach, test and see if you have low vitamin D, take a vitamin D. You don't need to take all the multivitamin, or if you have, that's correct?
Absolutely. There's only one but, and the but is to measure all the vitamins. That's quite costly. And even measuring a vitamin B1 or a 6 and a 12 is not only costly, but it only can be done in a couple of laboratories. It's not the standard test a GP would actually do. So I would really start with an analysis. What is your eating habit? Do you eat your fruits, your vegetables, your nuts, where lots of zinc, for example, is inside? This is important. So eat well. Then the likelihood is decreasing that you need an additional multivitamin and mineral. And of course, a vitamin D is a no-brainer. I think in the winters, if we don't have so much sunlight, we should supplement with vitamin D. But multivitamins have a plethora of other vitamins, of course, included, and there it's sometimes doubtful if they need it. To actually answer these questions, we are doing a quite big randomized controlled trial at the moment at the NUS Academy for Healthy Longevity, only including 40 to 60-year-olds who are quite healthy, but biologically older compared to their chronological age. What does it mean? These are individuals who are healthy, do not have chronic diseases yet, but they're biologically older, which means they're at higher risk of becoming diseased. So we are giving them a multivitamin and mineral supplementation. And then we are looking at really the biology to see if, for example, their biological age is reduced after taking these kind of multivitamins. So I'm hugely in favor to give supplements, but they have to be specific and individualized to the needs of the individuals.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And another very interesting study that you have done was to measure and confirm the claim of a supplement, a specific supplement, and what is really in the bottle. Can you basically double click on that and explain to our audience what have you found?
Yeah. So imagine yourself in front of that shelf with many of the supplements, and all have multivitamins or other ingredients inside. You think, okay, which one should I actually take? And while preparing a trial in our research center, I had the same question, like which bottle to buy, as consumers also have. So we thought, maybe we buy all, we bring them to the lab, and we actually looking at the quality. And I must admit, I was a little bit naive a couple of years ago, because I thought if it's written outside of the bottle, it should be actually inside of the bottle. So I'm buying what is being claimed. And while buying, and in that case, nicotinamide mononucleotide and also uracil A, while buying all the different bottles from different providers and bringing them to the lab, and it was the highest level of quality control and analyzing if actually the substance is inside of the bottle, we were able to showcase that roughly 1/3 of the supplements have the substance inside, a little bit a mixture of the dosages, or a little bit less very often. 1/3 had 40 to 60% of the substance inside, and 1/3 had actually no ingredients inside. So not the ingredients I wanted to have. And then I thought, whoa, this is something. So I brought it to another lab. Of course, I thought this cannot be true. It cannot be that roughly just 1/3 of the supplements are good quality. And we brought it to another lab, and same results. And then, of course, I looked into the literature, and this was already described for melatonin, for vitamin D, for proteins. So we know that there is such a heterogeneity in quality. And the difficulty is that just looking at the bottle, it doesn't mean that the colorful ones are the good ones, or the ones in the white bottle are the good ones, or the most expensive ones are the good ones. Absolutely not. So we were able to analyze that it's absolutely independent of the price, of how it looks like, the look and feel, and especially also if we think that the quality of that brand is good. So this really highlights I would say a huge problem in the field, that you can not very often trust what's inside of the bottle.
So what, for our audience, how would you recommend them to approach this problem? Is there a good website that they can go and verify that a specific supplement indeed include the right ingredient and the right amount?
Yeah, absolutely. Not so. After seeing this, I think a belief and trust is not at the right space. What I would actually do is, first of all, don't look at the colors, don't look at the price, but look at if there is an expiry date printed. Because once you have that, you are more likely that it's a good quality product. Because very often, if you're buying a bottle, it's not even printed how long this is going to last. And why is it so important? Because the minerals and the vitamins and all the molecules, they have half-life times, which means that there's a degradation of it. So if it's an old product, it's the same as olive oil, for example, the concentration of polyphenols, which are degrading with the months and the years. The same is happening for the molecules in the supplement bottle. So that's important. Then I would actually go to the website if they are stating that it's the pure molecule inside and how much. So that's what I would do. But we also found that even if they are giving the information, that very often this is not then the case. So unfortunately, and there's even another problem with batches, because one batch can be fantastic, and then you have a new production line, and that might be of less quality. So I would say there is not a very good solution for it. My work really relates to talking to governments, that we are actually making sure that there's a quality control. Because why should a consumer ask it? I think it should be the government, like we do for FDA approved drugs. We know that hopefully the drug is inside, and we should be using and treating, in my view, supplements in the same way, that at least we know it's inside.
Yeah, and FDA is a Food and Drug Administration, so it should take care of a supplement, which considered to be, I assume, something between drug and food. So yeah, I agree with you. That's something that maybe the FDA should pay more attention to. But it's very sad that what is written on the label is not really what, sometimes it's not really what you have in the bottle. And now I want to switch gear and discuss a bit about the geroprotective compounds. And there are a few new compounds that coming along. One of them actually came from Brian Kennedy in Singapore. That's the Alpha-Ketoglutarate. It's gained a lot of attention as a longevity supplement. What should our listener know about it and a bit its biology, evidence, and limitations?
Yeah, alpha-ketoglutarate is a very interesting molecule. It has been shown in my studies to prolong the health span and lots of pleiotropic effects, so positive effects. So what alpha-ketoglutarate does is helping the mitochondria to work better. So mitochondria are necessary to give energy to the cells, to us. Without mitochondria, we couldn't breathe and couldn't have this interview. I couldn't see you. So we need mitochondria, and they are inside of the mitochondria. We are talking about the Krebs cycle. So everybody with a little bit of biology, you still remember ATP, Krebs cycle, mitochondria building these energies. So alpha-ketoglutarate is very important there, and might therewith help mitochondrial function, but also, which is quite important, might help the DNA where methylation sites are there epigenetic, to make epigenetics actually younger and helping the changes which are occurring during the life course to reduce that. So alpha-ketoglutarate might therewith have a huge amount of effects across several organ systems, and it helps in animal models, which is great. And there was an observational study in humans out of the Brian Kennedy lab, actually showcasing that if people observationally taking alpha-ketoglutarate for a couple of months, there would be years of age reduction, which is actually good because you are biologically older. And that led to a randomized controlled trial, which I was leading. And what we really can see there is that there's not so much biological age reduction, or not absolutely not in years, a little bit, but especially the ones who are physically active, so already have good habits, and there it might be give a little bit of push into the even better direction. And also we were showcasing that it might help to reduce inflammation a little bit. So in totality, not the huge big effects which we all want to see, but tiny effects to really polish the body to age more gracefully and better.
And that's more in the type A population, correct? People that are already good, it can push them more. That's what I heard, correct?
Yes, it's especially the ones who are, again, middle-aged, 40 to 60. Many of our studies are in that age population, but who are biologically older compared to their chronological age. And what does that mean? Okay. It might be that these individuals are at higher risk of age-related diseases, which we would like to avoid, and are aging faster compared to their peers. So there you really want that push towards more a healthier situation to avoid age-related diseases.
Okay, so it's more to the 40 to 60 that are aging faster, and that can actually delay the aging process. Okay, thank you for the explanation. Another compound is Spermidine, and it's often described as an autophagy promoting compound. What human evidence do we have for that, and how strong is it?
Yeah, overall in the entire supplement field, I think the evidence of new molecules is not very, very strong, including Spermidine. But Spermidine is a little bit different because you're already eating Spermidine hopefully every day if you have a balanced diet. So I'm not sure, Jill, how much whole grains you ate and legumes and fermented products. So everything which makes your gut happy is actually their Spermidine is inside. So if somebody already has a diet, a Mediterranean diet, very likely that person already eats 10 to 20 milligram per day of Spermidine, which is great. And you already showcase that it really influences very likely the cells better. So autophagy, eating up, cleaning up the cells, mitochondrial function, DNA is stable. So hugely mechanistically, I think, towards the right track to have beneficial effects. So it makes sense. But then, of course, at least I, as a clinician, I want the evidence that it actually works, which means I need randomized controlled trials. So randomized controlled trials is most of the times you make two groups. You first have one group, you split them into two groups. One gets placebo and one gets the molecule and the drug or the supplement. So, and in Spermidine, there are a couple of randomized controlled trials, but quite small, and giving 1 milligram to 3 milligrams, sometimes 6 milligram of Spermidine. But already imagine if somebody has a Mediterranean diet, it's 10 to 20 milligram per day of Spermidine. So in these trials, it seems that there is a little bit of a positive signal in terms of cognitive aging, especially memory. So memorizing things is very important for the aging project. The aging project, that's absolutely the aging trajectory. It's absolutely not a project. But these studies are still small. So I'm talking about a maximum of 100 participants in these randomized controlled trials. So I would say for Spermidine, yes, it's absolutely a very important molecule. You can get it via food, and I think that would have is in favor, because we know a Mediterranean diet and have more fermented food, it's also very, very good for your gut microbiome, and via the gut microbiome for the brain, for the cardiovascular system. So I don't prescribe it very, very often if you would ask me.
Yeah, and it sounds like that, as you said, it's better to receive it from a healthy diet. So if you can get it from diet, it's better because it's packaged in the right way and include a lot of other molecules. I spoke yesterday with a dietitian from the Mayo Clinic, and we discussed the dark matter in food, and there are so many. We know the few macronutrient and the few hundred micronutrient, but there are millions of let's say nanonutrient maybe that we call them the dark matter, and they are important. So I'm 1% with you. It's better to get everything that you can from food and then to supplement based on what you miss. So that makes sense. And another interesting compound, curcumin, it's a widely used but often criticized for a poor bioavailability. From a geroscience perspective, does it meaningfully affect aging pathway?
Yeah, also here, there are a couple of randomized controlled trials. So I love curcumin because it's a polyphenol, and polyphenols have been shown, especially in, again, the Mediterranean diet, to have positive effects. And if you're looking at the polyphenols, they are anti-inflammatory, so that's good, antioxidant, which is great. And it also modulates and reduces systemic inflammation, very, very good. And it might also, curcumin really induce insulin sensitivity, which is great. So there have been studies in diabetes type 2, and showcasing that the glucose level, which should be actually stable, is in better control, which longer term markers from glucose, which is HbA1c, is lowered. So that's good. And how much curcumin is being given, roughly a gram. And if a gram is being given, then also it seems that CRP levels, which is a C-reactive protein, we very often measure the high sensitive CRP, that it's also lower compared to placebo. So overall, yes, it makes sense. Is it the magic pill? No, absolutely not. If somebody is struggling from type 2 diabetes, a little bit of inflammation, it very often goes hand in hand. Very often then also it goes hand in hand with cardiovascular risk. It might be something, but in in real time, there are other molecules which might have a bigger effect. So, but would it help a little bit? Yes, there is evidence.
Okay, so again, it's for a specific population, mainly the diabetic and maybe pre-diabetic, and but not for everyone.
No.
Thank you for that. A more personalized question or personal question: how do you personally decide what compound is interesting, promising, or ready for real-world use? What do you do? How do you log them in the right bin?
So me as a person, or me as a scientist, or me as a clinician?
I would say let's start as a clinician.
As a clinician. As a clinician, I'm very, very strict. You know me. I'm quite heavily evidence based, because I want to prescribe based on facts, based on evidence level. So before I implement it into clinical practice, I not only need to understand the mechanism. So do I understand why it would work, and is there any evidence in animal models that there is beneficial effect? There might be a beneficial effect in animal models without understanding why it works. That's fine. So I think that's bringing me to a point where I really want to understand why it works. However, I really would love to see that there are human studies, either observational. So you are measuring a certain molecule, for example, Spermidine, and then you are seeing that the people who have more intake, they have higher levels, that they also live longer, and that it actually makes sense to supplement it. So, and of course, I would love to see randomized controlled trials, which we now have for multivitamins and minerals, etc. And we are starting many of these kind of studies to bring more evidence to it. So this is how it works in my clinical practice. And but most importantly, in clinical practice, first, I want to know who needs what, because we don't prescribe anything just because we see it on population level, but I would measure vitamins, I would measure NAD levels to give nicotinamide mononucleotide, or I would measure epigenetics to see how epigenetically old somebody is before prescribing alpha-ketoglutarate. So it has to make sense. And I do it in a way as I would prescribe drugs, and I take supplements, nutraceuticals, as serious as I take normal pharmacological agents, so drugs, seriously. I need an indication. And then I'm choosing to actually propose to my patients and clients a certain supplement, and really based on human evidence. Me as a person, I do it in the same way. Me as a scientist, very different.
So let's talk about you as a scientist.
As a scientist, I love to understand the biology. So if I see in a mechanism, I understand it, I would love to bring it to humans. And that's what we are doing, even if we just see signals in animal models. Of course, I really want to positively influence the health of aging individuals, because that's my passion. But I do it in the way that we do randomized controlled trials. We are measuring everything that we can also analyze afterwards, even if a trial is negative, which means that both populations are still the same. I really try to find signals, because that's the beauty. Who needs what? Because you and I, we are aging so differently. Our pace of aging is so different. Like, not only that our sex is different, but the aging process is so different. So how can we really understand what all the molecules with so much potential could actually do for individuals' health? So we are much more investing in the NS1 approach, which means we are analyzing one individual, we are curating gerotherapeutics for them, and then we are really testing what works and what doesn't work in that individual as a scientist. And once I have the evidence, I bring it directly into clinical care.
As a Longevity by Design podcast listener, you understand the value of improving your health for today and for all the years ahead. And if you want to live your healthiest, longest life possible, you need to understand what's going on inside. At Inside Tracker, we take a personalized approach to health span optimization that eliminates guesswork from your wellness plan. Inside Tracker analyzes blood biomarker and DNA data, along with physiomarker data from fitness trackers like Oura Ring, to deliver personalized food, supplement, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations that allow you to take control and improve your health span. And for a limited time, Longevity by Design listeners can get 20% off at the Inside Tracker store. So if you're ready to receive a personal health analysis and data-driven wellness plan to optimize your body for the long haul, then it's time to start Inside. Visit insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today. That's insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today.
Yeah, and I want to say that what you are doing is very beneficial to the scientific community and actually to all of us, to humanity, because if you think about a supplement, we discussed the FDA before, there is no FDA ruling. I can come tomorrow with a new supplement and I can sell it and then nobody can tell me not to sell. And as you mentioned before, I can claim that I have X and actually I have Y there, and still I can somehow get around it and make a lot of money. And the companies that selling the supplement don't have a lot of interest to spend a lot of money and do the trial, because again, the FDA don't force them. And if they are doing the trial, a lot of time the trial is skewed because they want to show that it's positive. And what you are doing at Singapore is basically you are doing it as independent. You don't have any interest. You are not selling the supplement. So you're basically coming and showing to us what a supplement really working, what is the effect, something that I think that we really need, because this is an enormous industry. I think that it's trillions of dollars that people are spending, and now we are starting to see what is really beneficial or not. So I think that it's very important for our audience to understand that the amazing work that you are doing, and we are starting to see the fruit of that and starting to understand. So I'm very happy that I can communicate it to our audience.
Thank you so much. Yes, and we have also a conference, and that's called Unlock Healthy Longevity: Supplements and Repurposed Drugs. So really just the focus on these two topics. That's coming up next week, but luckily it's every year. So if the listeners want to come, we also have public sessions, because we really want to bring whatever we know to the public. Yeah. So that's important. And thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. So really bringing the message to everybody.
Yeah. So what is the exact name of the conference?
Unlock Healthy Longevity.
Okay.
Conference. And the focus is on supplements and repurposed drugs. It's always the last week of February in Singapore.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And another supplement that is broadly used, I would say, a lot of people are using it, is a supplement for sleep. And we know that sleep is a big problem for a lot of us, and especially people like us that traveling a lot and deal with jet lag and change of time zone and being busy and all of that. And one of them is melatonin. I think that maybe it's the most used supplement in the world, maybe not, but very close to that. So what can you tell our audience about that? What is the effect on the sleep architecture, circadian rhythm, and long-term health, especially in older adults?
Yeah, melatonin is being produced in our brain itself to put us to sleep, which is actually great. And the secretion of this hormone is, it's unluckily declining with chronological age. And I personally love melatonin, so I couldn't actually do my work without the supplementation. So we also call it the chronobiotic. So antibiotic, and this is a chronobiotic. And very often, if we are talking about melatonin, you have 0.5 milligram to even 5 milligram, 10 milligram, which is far too much. But very often we talk about 1 to 2 milligram, and then very importantly, the prolonged release of it. So you already said, yes, there is something like jet lag. So we are talking about circadian timing. So you are in a different time zone versus, and also very often being used for chronic insomnia. So if you really have a sleep problem. And the evidence for either a sort of jet lag a pill, or you had a night shift and you tried to come out of the night shift and go to sleep, is very different compared to if you have chronic sleep problems. So for the timing problem, it hugely works well. For chronic sleep problems, the effects are really modest. So if we are first starting for jet lag, so we already know in randomized controlled trials and from all the literature that if you are crossing at least 5 time zones, so 5 hours, then it really works well. And I personally, I couldn't fly without it. But for chronic insomnia, and then for the jet lag, of course, or you are coming out of the night shift, you only take it for 1 to 3 nights, and then you should be back and settle back into your time zone and your real timing. So there it works very well. On the other hand side, for chronic insomnia, it's very modest. So if you are thinking about if you have problems to fall asleep, then of course it should reduce the time to fall asleep, and there's only a small reduction in most of the studies of 15 minutes roughly. So the question is that good enough or not? Debatable. If you are looking at the efficiency of sleep, then it's a modest improvement. And the sleep stages, I would say also quite nicely, it's not, there are no meaningful full changes. And it has more positive effect compared to benzodiazepines because it doesn't have so much side effects the next day. So if people take sleeping pills like benzodiazepines, very often you have a little bit of a hangover, your psychomotor function is less, so you are just not good in coordination. And melatonin has that much less. So that's a positive thing if you have to choose what to take. But I would say that sleep hygiene is much better, and there are so many non-pharmacological and non-supplement intervention first to try, from the environment where you sleep to sleep timing to screen time, etc., to really manipulate the sleep and also the melatonin production in your brain.
Absolutely. So a tactical question about melatonin. So let's assume that you are flying today from, let's say, Singapore to New York. When are you going to take...
Terrible flight.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think that there is direct now, correct?
Yes.
But when would you take the melatonin? Would you take it before you board to the airplane, on the airplane, when you land? And what is the best timing, and what is the best amount? If you can give us some tricks, how to use it the best.
Yeah, don't take it before you board, because you still need to showcase your boarding pass and find your seat. So don't do that. No, you are giving melatonin dependent on when you land. So always count backwards. If you are landing in the morning, for example, in New York, what you do, and this is an 18-hour flight, okay, so maybe not the most representative example, but you would be trying to be still awake in the first hours, and then go to sleep to have your 8 hours, if you can do that, on the plane to sleep. So you would take it, think about 1.5 hours before landing, you would take plus 8 hours, plus an hour, and then you would take your melatonin. So you are dosing it based on when you land. Okay. If you are landing in the evening, I would sleep and induce sleep before, at the beginning of the flight, that you are more awake during the last hours of your flight, and then deboard and go to sleep again. So mimic where you are landing, and that's in terms of lightening, but this is also in terms of chronobiology and manipulating your melatonin.
Okay, so basically try to fit yourself to the time zone of the new place as early as possible. And there are some people, I heard some people are even doing it a few days before. So
Yeah.
basically try to fit yourself to the time zone of the new place a few days before, because then it will be easier for you.
Yeah, yeah. There's not so much. It absolutely makes sense if people have the time to do that and the capacity to do that. Really try to go an hour to really adapt already, because then you, especially if you have many time zones to as a gap, that would help. Trial it. I really reset the clock with 3 to 5 milligram during the flight, and then consecutively take it.
Excellent. And I also heard some people that flying a lot that are saying, if I'm flying only for a day or two, I want to stay in my time zone. So basically I'm trying to, because it's take a few days. For me, what I've seen, it can take up to 5 to 7 days until I'm accumulated to the new time zone. So if you fly, let's say, I don't know, Boston to San Francisco, and you are there for a day, maybe stay in the Boston time zone and just go to sleep earlier. And so there are a lot of tricks about that. I'm not sure what is the science about it, but it's definitely an interesting domain for most of us that are flying a lot.
Yeah, but I would say it also depends how awake you have to be during that meeting, because it's important enough to fly out. So I want to be as sharp as possible there most of the times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Andrea. And another subject I would like to discuss is digital biomarkers. It's an area that I know that you spend a lot of time on. And so can you explain to our audience what are digital biomarkers of aging, and how do they differ from traditional blood-based biomarkers?
Yeah, I would say that digital biomarkers of aging are the new frontier, the new kids on the blocks in neuroscience and neuromedicine, healthy longevity medicine. And of course, they are not new. So think about what you have around your finger, around your wrist, and very likely this is either a smartwatch or a smart ring. And they are producing data, which we now call digital biomarkers of aging. So we already have biological biomarkers of aging, clinical biomarkers of aging. So think about blood biomarkers where you measure it in the blood, or you clinical biomarkers, for example, of VO2 max, or you're measuring grip strength, or all clinical biomarkers and measuring the blood pressure. So now we have the digital devices, which very often can measure physiology, and they do it in a way that it's quantifiable, which is great. They also measure our behavior, if I'm really going to the gym or not. And they do it with devices, technologies, which are more and more reliable, which can really then reflect biological aging processes and predict how old we are. And we even in, not only in clinical practice, all my patients have their digital devices, so measuring their heart rate variability, measuring their temperature, measuring even sometimes now blood pressure or an ECG, measuring their steps, measuring their sleep. We just talked about looking at REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. So this is information we are using to not only create interventions for in clinical practice, but also creating interventions for randomized controlled trials and research. And we really want to see these kinds of new digital biomarkers of aging as an outcome parameter to judge if certain supplements, such as melatonin, very good example, actually helps. How beautiful is it? You are measuring how well you are sleeping. You are giving glycine, for example, or melatonin for sleep induction, and then you can actually see that it works, and you can quantify it without taking blood samples, without being invasive, and doing that reliably. So huge amount of information. And I would say every person or nurse who has such a device should actually ask their GPs to have a look at it. And the GP should actively ask, how many steps did you do? What is your sleep quality? What is your estimated VO2 max, for example?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. It's a new frontier, but your example of go to your GP and ask him to look at that. I've been at my annual physical a couple of weeks ago, and I started to show my GP my data about my weight. So I'm using Withing scale. So I have also body fat percentage and muscle percentage and all of that. And basically she ignored me because she didn't know what to do with that. So I think that
change your GP.
No, I think that yes, but I think that one important point is what you are doing in the Healthy Longevity Society, is a medical society, is we need to educate them because they don't know what to do about it, and I'm not sure that I think that most of us don't know what to do about it because you have a huge amount of data. If you think about it, you look at your heart rate, you have the data, I don't know, every millisecond. What is my question to you is, what is if you are looking at all the data that our smart watch is providing to us today, what are the let's say a few most important output that you think that they are the most important, and also what are the implications of that, like if a physician is listening to us today, what can they do about a sleep cycle or steps? Or I think that step is easier, but can you provide a few examples of what are the implications of a specific data that you receive from digital biomarkers?
Yeah. So first, a quite general answer. I think we cannot ignore anymore, especially not physicians or healthcare professionals, that we have these kind of data, and it's so neglected within the medical field. 18 years ago, I did my first implementation study using accelerometers, which is nothing else than actually counting steps, into the falls clinic because it made sense. Like, I want to know how many steps somebody is taking, what the risk of falls is, and even detect falls with these kind of devices. And it's so insightful. And I will give you an example. I very often, when I worked as a geriatrician in geriatric practice, implementing all these devices, which were the first ones being developed by big, but sometimes or small companies, which were already quite reliable, it hugely changed my conversation with my patients because I was not asking them, do you move? Do you have a dog? But now I could actually say, okay, where is this device for 2 weeks? And I will see you back. And then we have a different conversation. And very often I had the conversations that I said to my patients, I don't want to be your dog. Because I knew that it was maybe 500 steps in the evening and 500 steps in the morning to actually to get the dog outside. So it's so different. How many steps does somebody do at night, for example? Can you adjust your diuretics, for example, to help hypertension? So it has so much implication and it's so useful. But what we don't do well, that's a reason why neither the consumers nor the healthcare professionals make actually use of these fantastic tools, is because we don't teach consumers. We are just selling the devices. And we don't teach healthcare professionals, and they are just seeing the device and they have no clue what to do with it. And of course, many have already, shouldn't say no clue, but very often healthcare professionals do not ask because it's not integrated into our medical records. In my clinical care, all my patients are not being watched 24/7, but we are tracking their behavior 24/7 because we want to understand what people are doing, what the physiology is, what kind of triggers they are, to really help them and to polish actually the health of these individuals. And digital devices can hugely help. So what can a consumer do? I would first say stimulate your GP to have a conversation. And as you already said, the number of steps, so human movement is the first thing. Like, get to your 6,000 or 8,000 steps. You don't have to go to your 12,000 steps per se. It's even better. More, there might be not an additional effect, but do your steps and set your goals. What do you want to reach? Very importantly is not only looking at steps, but also how much physical activity do you have that really your heart being is going up. We are calling it zone 2, 3, 4, 5 physical activity. And we know that we need zone 3, sometimes 4 and 5. So you have to run towards your exhaustion at certain times to really go and increase your VO2 max, which is the best predictor for mortality. So we know that walking is good, so the number of steps is good, but then that running, interval training is very important. And you can actually measure it if you did it, which is great. But it comes back to normal human psychology. Like if you do it, what can you actually do then to improve it? And you have to make sure that you are actually running. And the accountability, I think, especially with a GP, but also, for example, with a peer, to say, okay, you are my friend, what's your steps? What's your zone 3 or 4 or 5? Can we actually make sure, and taking the accountability from each other, that we are doing it, and in 2 weeks' time we're showcasing it because it's now objective that we actually did it, and we celebrate that we did something for our health. The same you can do for sleep. So how much REM sleep, how much deep sleep did you do? So deep sleep, for example, so you're going in to fall into sleep, and then you should actually fall into the deep sleep, and it should last in total roughly, and if really optimal, 1.5 hours. And then you are cycling through light and then REM sleep and back and forth, and you should have at least 1.5 hours of REM sleep. So it's not so important how many hours in totality you sleep, but how much deep sleep and REM sleep you have. And very often that leads then to 7-8 hours, because but if you cycle through the night effectively, not cycling, but really cycling through the shifts at during the sleep, 1.5 and 1.5 is good enough, and we can now, or it's optimal actually, we can now measure it. And the same for heart rate variability and all the other stuff. So I think accountability, knowledge improvement is most important. So for everybody who is listening now, it's independent if you're a consumer or you're a healthcare professional, maybe also consumer, like really see that you do zone 3 at least, and you also have your 1.5 hours of deep sleep, and you will feel different.
Yeah, and I think that in my view, the value of those digital biomarkers, or let's say the fitness tracker, is that it's collected for you seamlessly. And you cannot, when you come to your clinician, when I came there, she asked me, okay, how many times a week do you exercise? What do you do? And all of that. In a way, she shouldn't ask me that. If I connected my data to her EMR, then she can have everything and come and say, hey, Gil, I've seen that in the last year, you exercised on average, 4 hours a week, and you did the X, Y, and Z. And then I can recommend to you, you do too much endurance and too little strength, so adjust it. So those are the discussions that I'm expecting to have with the physician, and I assume that it will come in the future. But in order to do that, we need to educate the clinician, we need to integrate it into the EMR, we need also to educate the consumer. I think that it's not easy. The healthcare system is moving slowly, but that's my view. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. But I think here the consumers have a choice, because the consumers can also drive that they are choosing certain physicians or healthcare professionals who actually are a little bit more open to it. So we at G Longevity, we actually nudge in individuals where we see, okay, not so good sleep, give them a call. Hey, what happens? Couldn't we change something? And not even waiting until your annual exam, for example. It's very useful already. And I think on public, from a public health perspective, absolutely we should do that. So, but I think also healthcare professionals should actually train consumers how to use it, as we would do for diabetics, to know what a glucose level is and how to titrate the insulin level. So we need to do that for also for physical activity, but also other behaviors. So like sleep, but also dietary intake. So yes, absolutely. There is a lack of knowledge. We should absolutely, if any dean of medical schools is listening at the moment, change your curriculum and integrate it. Very important. But consumers have a choice, and consumers are hugely powerful in our field. So choose the ones and actually tell, I won't come back if you don't change.
Yeah, and also, as you said, the consumer are educated enough today that so they know, and there is enough information that they can come and say, hey, I need to do X amount of minutes of endurance and X amount of strength, and as you said, I need 1.5 hours of deep sleep, so how do I adjust it? So a lot of those things, it's also in your control. We cannot say it's the responsibility of the clinician. It's your responsibility because you have the highest interest of your body. So I think that is both. And talking about which actually I love the subject of digital biomarker. I think that I agree with you. It's something that giving us a lot of information that we haven't had before, and a lot of way to understand the body. Something that is around for a long time but started to gain popularity is even all the biomarkers that we haven't paid a lot of attention to, like for example, hand grip strength and 5 times sit-to-stand test that you and others show a lot of correlation with health span and lifespan. Can you describe those tests for our audience that haven't heard about that? And how are they related? And why do you think that they're related to aging and health span and lifespan?
Yeah, these are markers which every GP, every family physician should actually do. So next time, if you go to an annual, you're asking your GP, can I measure my grip strength? Or can you please measure the time up and go test or 5 times sit-to-stand? The grip strength might be good for every age group. The sit-to-stand test only for a little bit older individuals. So all these tests are measuring how good the muscle is. And when I'm talking about muscle, it's about muscle mass and muscle strength, and that muscle mass and muscle strength together give muscle function. And the hand grip strength is measured with a handheld dynamometer. So the device is in your hand, very, very easy to do. We even did it in a very, very remote African research districts, very easy to do. And you are getting the kilograms of strength you have in your hands. And that's so predictive, not only for the incidence of disease, but especially mortality. And now we even have reference values for different countries, dependent on sex, and most important, dependent on age. And we just published that very recently, last week, was for Asia, all Asian countries, sex and age specific reference ranges. And we earlier already published reference ranges for the 5 times sit-to-stands and the time up and go test for European, but also American cohorts. And that's so important because you should not only be passing that test, but you should be optimal within your age and your sex range. And that's so important. And these tests take 1 or 2 minutes to do. They cost really nothing for the hand grip strength, just the device, of roughly $250 US. And then you can use it and use it and use it all of your patients. And there's really no money involved, no financial investment for a sit-to-stand test. And these quite easy tests, we really want within the United Nations, the Decade of Healthy Aging, we want to implement in all the countries because you can do that everywhere on Earth because it's not dependent on very expensive MRI machines of blood testing. So it's a super easy biomarker, but I would use it especially as a screening instrument. Should you worry or not before going further to not only measure your hand grip strength, but also your quadriceps strength or your chest strength, for example, or your power. So can you do a vertical jump? How far can you jump? So that really, from a screening, leads to much, much more investigations to then really be able to advise individuals.
Yeah, and I can tell an anecdote about that. I actually bought such a device for the hand grip in Amazon for $22 or something like that. I'm not sure that is as sophisticated as the one that you have, but it's good enough for me. And I measured and I was surprised that my hand grip was very low. And I also, at Insta Tracker, we develop a polygenic score for that, and my polygenic score will show that I'm very low. So that gave me a very easy decision to make. I should invest more on building muscle. And I've done it for a few years already, and I've seen a big improvement in that. So I think that something like that, hand grip strength, is so easy, as you said, and it can give you so much information. So it's very sad that not every clinician is using such a tool that we know that is so correlated with longevity. So thank you for the explanation about that. And we only have a few more minutes because I know that you need to go to your next engagement. So I would like very quickly to talk about some let's say, drugs that are in the news today. For example, NAD analog, NMN, and NR. What is the current view of the aging society or aging research on them? Is it something that you will recommend someone to consume, or still wait and see more evidence in the humans? What is your view as of today?
Yeah, you might know that I'm a little bit in love with NAD precursors. So we do lots of research because I see lots of potential. But with lots of buts, because we haven't really solved the puzzle in whom we should give NAD precursors, for example, nicotinamide mononucleotide, which is in NMN, but also NR. There are so many other substances, and we even do not know in head-to-head trials what's the best. But we are focusing on nicotinamide mononucleotide. So first of all, the books are absolutely not closed. We cannot recommend everybody now to take it. But so what is, why could it work? We need NAD, and NAD is a substance to give energy to everything. Without NAD, we could not actually survive at all. Not minutes without NAD. And to get towards NAD, we need substances like NMN. But NMN is just a precursor, and either by the gut or in our cells, it's constantly renewed and being modified to build then NAD, to then serve as sort of energy for all our cells. So it makes sense physiologically that if somebody has lower NAD levels, which happens quite often at older age or in individuals with diseases, that if you subsidize the precursors, that you would actually increase your NAD levels. So that's the hypothesis. There are a couple of human studies actually showcasing that. And one is from us, where we included, again, middle-aged individuals, relatively healthy, and we gave them either placebo, so no NMN inside, and then 300, 600, and 900 milligram of NMN. So it's a randomized controlled trial, very nicely designed. And we were actually showcasing that if the group is taking 600 or 900 milligrams, so the higher dosages, that they would improve the walking speed, which is very important as the hand grip strength or the Citrus-10 test, and it's associated with survival, and the quality of life was improved. So I would say, small study, only 80 people inside, so 2020, but it worked. Most importantly is, and that's for me so striking, not everybody who got 600 or 900 milligram actually had that improvement. So there were people who are getting it who were not improving at all, and there were people with a lower dosage of 300 who were improving and had clinically meaningful outcome parameters. And that led me to the idea, why don't we measure NAD before we give NMN? Because as we would do if we are giving an anti-diabetic drug, for example, insulin, we first measure glucose levels. So that's very, very normal. Before you give an antihypertensive drug, you first measure the blood pressure. So we now develop that sort of thinking also for supplements, under which also nicotinamide mononucleotide. So we do enormous amount of studies at the moment looking at, can we measure NAD levels? What does it mean for that individual to have a certain level? And if we subsidize with supplements like NMN or NR, do we increase the NAD level? And do we therewith increase the function of that individual? And I think that's the new way we should do supplement work or nutraceutical work and, of course, drug work, because we need to understand who has an indication, who really needs it, measure it before giving it, and measure the outcome. And this is so beautiful for NMN that at least after a couple of years establishing the assays to measure NAD, it's very difficult. We now have a better understanding who needs it, for how long, what dosage, and that's, I think, the new arena of really precision medicine. Because why should I, again, as for multivitamins, why should I give a multivitamin, a supplement to somebody if there is no clinically meaningful change because there is no need? Then I just give it to the liver and the kidney to metabolize it, and then we are excreting it.
Yeah, no, it's makes a lot of sense. I think that it's definitely the right way. My follow-up question is, do we already have like a routine a blood test of a NAD level in the body? Can I go to Quest Diagnostic and do that, or we don't have it yet and we need to wait a few more years?
That's a very, very good question. So yes, there are many of these consumer panels, but also there are panels around. And we are starting a study. So we bought all these either consumer test kits or test kits being used in clinical practice to compare them. So what we did for the supplements, we bought everything, we were testing them. Now we are testing the accuracy, how accurate it is, these kind of NAD test kits compared to the mass spectrometry golden standard of measuring NAD levels. Because actually I wouldn't know which kind of test kit to use because they are not validated. And as we don't know how much is inside of the bottle, I want to know that I can titrate when I know what's inside of the bottle with the right measurement. So I'm really looking forward to start. So roughly in 6 months or 4 to 6 months, we will have the results. And I'm absolutely looking forward to show the comparison of these 25 test kits we bought. And we are just embarking that analysis.
Yeah, that's super important. I remember at the beginning of COVID, there have been a lot of test kits for COVID, and the 99% of them were nonsense. So I assume that it's the same here, and we are going back to the beginning of our discussion about the content of the supplement bottle. It's the same. It's like we need to be very careful about that and be sure that everything is working. I have a lot of more questions, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So my last question to you is, if our listening remember just one thing from today's conversation, what should it be?
Something we haven't touched on, and whatever you do with your body, I think you should enjoy every day. That's most important. So that comes to the notion that I not only believe, but I have proof that we can polish and manipulate positively. So positive manipulation, our body so much that it functions better. So really giving the right oil to the machinery to go for longer with less energy consumption. So partly, of course, we cannot engineer our genes at the moment. A big proportion of our health is in our own hands, and you can utilize things like grip strengths, like your digital devices you have. Be curious about your sleep. Be curious how you can modify your sleep with certain things. Really test yourself what works and what doesn't work, and be curious, and then you will, I think, love every day you have. And
Absolutely.
You are able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. So, Andrea, thank you so much for helping us cutting through the noise and focus on what truly matters for extending health span. For our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode of Longevity by Design, please like, follow, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It's help others find this science-driven conversation. Thanks for tuning to Longevity by Design, produced by Inside Tracker. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by Inside Tracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit insidetracker.com/podcast.